Hello and happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to Big Break Foundation TV on Themed Experience TV. We have a great show lined up for you. We took a couple months break, but I think with today's lineup and our guests, you'll definitely enjoy the conversation and learn some things. So, without further ado, I want to bring in our guests, Lacy, Xavier, and MK. Let's let's get into our conversation. There's a lot to talk about, and so I just want to dive in. So first things first, we're talking today in regards to making our industry more inclusive. I want to get into when and how did you learn about the industry and your place in it. Lacy, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to start.
Sure. So I came to the industry after working in professional theater for about 15 years. And there's like two different ways this goes, but I would say like I found the industry out of falling in love with the lack of inclusivity in theater. And that was a really tough thing for me. It was a moment of like, I got what I wanted professionally in terms of the theaters I was working at. And then I realized how much just how hard it is for people to afford to see theater and how hard it is for people who aren't either living off like generational wealth in a trust fund or being fully supported by a partner financially to actually make a living in theater. And that really broke my heart. And when I realized that themed entertainment was a place that I could use all the same skills and actually achieved the same things that I fell in love with about theater, which is like bringing people together, sharing an experience, that collective effervescence aspect that makes us all smile because we all know exactly what we're talking about. So yeah, it's my second marriage, and so far we're very happy together. But that's how I ended up here.
And where are you at now, just with your role?
I am currently a creative director, and I head up creative development with the Beals Art Company.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lacy. Xavier?
Hi. So I was first introduced to the industry when I was very young, and it happened by accident. I was watching a recorded VHS tape of a Disney movie that I recorded. And after the movie was over, it was A Wonderful World of Disney, where he talked about Epcot and all that jazz with the Florida Project. And so as a little kid, that's, basically what I wanted to do. But the thing is, I didn't know how to get there. And it wasn't until I was in senior in high school, early college years, where I found out about Imagineering and what they do. And since then, it was my goal to get there. Luckily, in 2008, I started off my college program over at Disney, networked, got into Destinations Disney as a graphic designer, and then went over to Imagineering as a graphic designer as well. We did that for a while. Then now I'm currently freelancing in the industry.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then MK.
Yeah, so a part of my embarrassed maybe, but I'm over it. I'm not a kid who knew anything about the theme park industry. I grew up in Massachusetts. As Lacy was saying, I grew up in a giant family, not a family that could afford theater or theme parks or anything like that. I didn't even know anyone who had ever been to Disneyland or Disney World. I knew that I was interested in art and design. And so I went to UMass Amherst, and we were the first class of artists who graduated with a degree in computer animation. So the first artists in the country to get a BFA in computer animation. And that was a new degree. And so it was a lovely hodgepodge. A third of my classes were in computer science, a third were in fine art, a third were in engineering, to throw together how artists might use technology. And when I was an undergrad, Pixar released their first short. They released Luxo Jr. And I'm like, I want to do that. And I'm not that good yet. So I decided to go to grad school. So I found a program where some interesting computer animation was happening, and I applied there. It was Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. But the gentlemen in that program were in mechanical engineering. They weren't designers. So that school forwarded my application materials to another university, Cal State LA. So I both went to and graduated from a university I never applied to. But they had a computer animation program, graduate program, an MFA program. And again, it was very multidisciplinary. I had to take engineering classes, I had to take art classes, and there was a lot of signatures required on forms for this to happen. And there was always somebody who was mad about that, right? When I was at UMass Amherst, the artists only got to use the computer lab between midnight and 6 a.m. because the engineering students were priority. When I was at Cal State LA, there was a program, all the art majors, all the MFA majors had to take a class on how to write a dissertation, so that then when you did do a dissertation, you had like a little practice. And many of the students left the room when it was my turn because they didn't think computers was art. They said I was bastardizing my art with technology. By the way, it was a glass classroom, so their protest was odd because we could still see them right on the other side of the door. Next semester, I taught that class, by the way. So my dean came into my office at Cal State LA, where I was also teaching, and he said, Imagineering is doing this like design contest thing. Could you participate? And I'm like, I don't know a thing about Imagineering. I've never been to Disney or Disneyland. And he said, look, it doesn't have to be good. Just like participate, and next year we'll get our act together. So I entered the Imaginations design competition, which was originally designed as a diversity recruitment initiative and is about to go back to that. So anybody who's interested in that competition, they're in the middle of reimagining that right now. So really take a good look at that. So when I was, I made it to the finals, I got flown to Glendale, from Pasadena. So that was a 10-mile flight. And I'm getting interviewed for internships. And the gentleman interviewing me is like, let me get this straight. You're an artist who can code on a Unix box? And I'm like, yep. And he says, can you start tomorrow? And I said, yep. And I was there for 27 years, right? So my universe that had been this mishmash of art and engineering and technology, and which made me feel very much like an outsider. I wasn't any of those things. I was all those things. That's exactly what themed entertainment is, be a something, but understand the something on the side. And I had kind of hid some of those things, right? Imagineering is like, what? And I'm like, my people. I found my people.
I love that. And even as somebody who had access to this industry, my family went to amusement parks and aquariums and museums and shows and all the different activities. I never thought, I was very naive to think about this industry as a career path for me. So like in all the conversations I've been having, everybody's kind of gotten in their own bit different way and finding their big break. But we know that it can be easier, right? There's a lot of different barriers, or even undefined roadmaps of how it is you get to the place that you want to be within this industry. So I want to kind of set up our conversation a little bit, ending it on a positive note and definitely actionable items for everybody to take back to their organization or work on individually, to open up this industry more. But I do want to set the tone a little bit and talk about some of the barriers you may have experienced coming into this space, just to set that groundwork, but then moving into a more productive and positive direction. Does anybody want to go first? I'll call it you.
I think that one barrier that exists for everybody, no matter where you come from, and this is a barrier I've helped hopefully try and solve. So I have collected a massive list of resources for all of our audience members, and we will cut and paste and share that with you. And many of them are stuff that folks from the industry invented because it didn't exist. So one of the barriers which is still a barrier, it was more so 25 years ago, is nobody talks about this industry. Like it's a big secret, like how things happen back of house. And when it's a secret industry, even if you want to get into it, it can be hard to sort of figure that out. So about 10 years ago, I started collecting resources for my students, books you should read, who should your Facebook friends be, best practices for your portfolio and resume. Because, if you're an accounting major, you know who the top 100 firms are. Mm-hmm. People who want to be in themed entertainment can't name 4 companies who do it, and there's hundreds of companies who do it. So there is a barrier that has nothing to do with who you are or where you're from. It's just the industry has for so long kept things a big secret. And then the next, as we unpeel the onion, the next layer is the folks who know about this industry and the opportunities in theater, museums, theme parks are the folks who have been there, and those tend to be wealthier Americans. And so then that's a pipeline of people with a very particular point of view and a very particular set of experiences, who can maybe take risks that other students can't. So there's another barrier to participation.
No, absolutely. Xavier, do you want to expand on your experiences and insight on either what MK said or even your personal access into this industry?
So for me, I think what would be best is I'm coming from sort of a city limit, inner city Chicago sort of education, where we didn't know anything about themed entertainment industry at all. Like the closest thing we had was Six Flags Great America, but we just go there, ride roller coasters, and that's it. There's no behind the scenes. There's no stories. There's nothing. So I remember in high school we got a visit from the college program, the Disney college program, and they would talk about, hey, come join us for 3 or 6 months out of the year and work at the parks, and then they're just trying to get students in there to work for the parks, but they didn't go on to explain themed entertainment and the pathways you get once joining Disney college program. So I would think that it would be better suited if themed entertainment companies, big, small, would reach out to these, high school, junior high level children and talk about themed entertainment and pathways on how to get into it.
Yeah, and even expanding on that a little bit more, the psychology says typically between the ages of 8 and 10 is when you decide what your career path is going to be or what you're interested in. Now that could obviously change, but even getting younger students engaged in their natural play and curriculum and introducing them to this industry, there's so many different avenues. Lacy, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, that's a nice one because there are so many organizations that are already in place who are doing a great job of that are like working in, I'm trying to remember the one I knew in Chicago, which is like Arts and Communities or something like that. There's one in LA called Inner City Arts that, like, I'm just looking at my email right now. Yeah, Inner City Arts. That, like, their whole thing is setting up career days of, like, if you are interested in a career in the arts, here are all the different ways that there are to be an artist. Here's all the different ways that you can, like, find a career and a life for yourself that isn't necessarily ones that maybe you just see on TV, or that you are constantly getting the message that it isn't sustainable and it's for other people. It's for people who aren't like you.
Yeah,
So
Melody has in the comments here, there should be a Netflix show about designing for themed entertainment that's not Disney focused. And so in the resources that I provided that Kelly is sharing with the group, there is Imagineering in a Box, which is a partnership between Khan Academy and Walt Disney Imagineering, and which is a spin-off of Pixar in a Box, which is about teaching people how to animate. That's a really great resource. It's Disney focused, right? It's for a slightly older audience, high schoolers, maybe sophomore, junior year. There's a really great little workbook produced by a company called Catapult in the UK. And Catapult with a K. They have produced a workbook for homeschooled children, middle schoolers, much younger middle schoolers, on how to design a theme park. And it's, first of all, it's all in felt, which is adorable, right? But it talks about business plans, site plans, how to use space, environments, and little by little more things are becoming available. But again, it is a bit of a hunt and peck for you to have to find it. Like, no American kid is going to know that this construction company in the UK has this little workbook for them. So not only do we need to invent resources to be better at reaching the younger students, but we need to be better about connecting each other with what already exists.
No, I couldn't agree more. And one of the big reasons why Big Break Foundation is started and launched is so that we can be, we understand there are people who have been doing this and amplifying this industry and opening it up in so many different ways and having almost an umbrella of all these organizations, associations, and help start finding the solutions and building roadmaps so more people can come into this industry, and different people. The chat is blowing up. MK, they're like, yes, we agree, we agree. So kind of taking that into a forward moving direction, how can we start making this industry more inclusive, starting with inclusive experiences? Um, and just we can just riff and go back and forth, and there's so many different ways, but I know one of the things is just making sure that everybody's at the table, everybody's represented, that not every person in front on a project it looks the same or has the same ideas. That's the biggest thing for me, and being intentional in that search. I know we're all so busy, right? But ultimately, taking the additional time, being intentional, and how you set up your team from the beginning is going to be paramount to the end result. But I would love to hear your feedback and kind of some of the things either you've seen that have worked in this industry or that you have implemented yourself in some of the spaces.
Yeah, I will jump in and just say I think it is absolutely imperative to widen your social circle every single chance you get, because I think we've all seen it. Everyone defaults to working with people they already know, working with people they're comfortable with, and that leads to a lot of rooms where everybody looks the same, everybody's watching the same TV, reading the same books. So really targeting, like, who can I talk to at this mixer who does not look like me? Who can I go out and start a conversation with? And God, yes, it is nerve-wracking. I will never say that it is easy, but it absolutely pays dividends again and again and again. And I think we all have to challenge ourselves to do that.
Well, and also me and my 0 MBAs, right? The industry is leaving so much money on the table by not welcoming these communities, right? I routinely try and do a Disney park without a mobile device. It's impossible, right? Like, I can't make a reservation, I can't get a fast pass, I can't get in a virtual queue, I can't download my PDF ticket, right? The presumption that all of your guests are tech savvy and can afford that device is a limiting factor. Like, I think about, people like, what about my grandma? Think of my grandma. What about my mother? What about my 60-year-old brother? Right? Like, there's the idea that most people will use this actually leaves a lot of people out of the conversation. Also, grandparents have a lot of money and they want to spend it on their grandkids. So that is a demographic that we should really consider catering experiences to. Larger print, rooms that are a little more accessible. And then also, I really liked Monai used beginning, middle, and end. A lot of times, well-intentioned efforts just fall flat because they're like, what? I hung a postcard with the job posting at a historically Black college.
I did it.
Like, wait, I did the thing. How come the people aren't here? That's the beginning. That's like the pre-beginning, right? You really, if this matters, you have to commit to it. And it's not just talking to third graders and, and letting them even know this opportunity exists, books, TV show, online and such. It's committing to making legitimate long-term connections with quality programs, bringing students in as interns and committing to training them. Because if they've never been to a park, they don't know what rock work is. They may be the world's best engineer or sculptor or whatever, but without the lens of theme parks, they're not going to excel in that environment. So you hang the postcard on the wall, you make space, and maybe that's committed funds to bring different points of view in. While they're there, you train them, and then you have a career path. You don't just say, internship's over. That was fun 6 months, right? You have to, the beginning, middle, and end is a commitment along the entire career path. And there's been some good efforts in the industry. Joel Torme, who's a Rockwork lead, he started a program with the University of New Mexico School of Fine Arts, which is a Native American school. It has a great sculpting program to teach them to be rockwork artists. And he committed to that, and he visited several times a semester. He trained the faculty how to train the students, and they had a budget for 3 interns every semester for 3 years. Right, so that's a long-term commitment, which involves money. It's the first thing that gets cut when budgets get tight. Mm-hmm. Pandemic. Housing crash. These extras are the first program that gets cut. So you need to have an internal conversation about, does this matter to us or not? Right, and if it matters, stop cutting it. Stop starting and stopping and having a little program or going to lecture to a university or a school and saying, here's what our industry is, and say, I did it. I told the kids about the thing. It's a longer term commitment. Mm-hmm. We also started a program. Southern California has a really great 60 plus year history with manufacturing, machine shops and the like. And so Disney joined that 60 years later than they should have. And a lot of the really great talent is coming out of trade schools. Well, at the time, Disney had a requirement that you had to have a college degree, not a 2-year degree. And so I got that off the table. I pulled that off for apprenticeship roles and creative roles. You still need a college degree for engineering roles, but that was like a little bit of a win for me because we were excluding 19-year-olds who already had 3 years in a shop, right? They were really, really good at what they did. And so in having these discussions with the Southern California Manufacturers Society, they were going to help us pick students because they already have relationships with all these schools. And so somebody said, well, what about their records? And the Disney folks said, well, you're going to recommend who the good students are. We don't need to see their transcripts. And they said, no, their records. Most of these students have arrest records because they have come from terrible circumstances, and somebody, often a parole officer, got them into this really good program. And so we had to say, we don't care, right? But that is changing a lot of the presumed pipeline processes to get to the end. So the beginning is, I don't care what your degree is. I don't care that you have an arrest record, these other things. And the end is the job.
Yeah.
Well, I would actually, oh, sorry, Monai.
No. Go ahead, Lacy.
I would also say that continues through to mid-career. That continues through. So once you put these people in leadership positions, make sure you are supporting them absolutely and understanding that like the barriers they're facing do not end just because they got a good job and are like thriving within your company. Like some of the meetings I've walked into with other companies were like, yeah, I'm the youngest person there. I'm the only woman in the room. Like understand what that means to people as they go through their career and as they get those promotions as well, and make sure you're supporting them at those stages too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like just to even add to that, retainment is you're not thinking about that process and looking at your environment of you can create the pipeline, you can get people in, but if you don't have systems, processes, policies, and procedures that support everyone within your organization to thrive in an equitable way, you're going to lose people. And I know some of that has happened, or people don't invest in this industry or a career within this industry because they don't see themselves in it.
Yeah.
And that's so important as well. Xavier, is there anything additional you want to add?
So in addition to what MK said earlier, I came, from a pretty okay family financially, but still not okay enough to go to SCAD type of thing. And because I wanted to be a theme park designer, I had to figure out my way on how to get there. And I did not necessarily know how. What I did know is I was good at illustration. So I did animation in college. I got into graphic design because it's something I liked. And I did all these other classes outside of just my two majors on my spare time, just because I had no clue how to get into themed entertainment. I took fashion classes. I took website design classes, special effects classes. I took culinary classes just because. And that made me a better designer in the long run, not only because I diversified my education, but at the same time, I got all these little like nuggets of, information and stuff like that. And I molded it together to become a theme park designer. So now when I'm doing stuff like signage, because I specialize in signage, I think about all these other things. The other day I did a sign on, it was it took place in Mexico, and it took place in a certain time in a certain area. And in order to do all that, I needed the knowledge and information specific area, other in that area to produce the sign. So I would have to say, not only diversify your social group that everybody's around you, also diversify your education. Do things that you won't normally do on a daily basis and learn different things. And for the theme park companies to reach out to these places that can't afford to go to SCAD or any other theme park specific, college or university.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm even a testament to that. I don't have a traditional education. Lex, thank you so much for sharing that. I don't have a traditional education. I would say like I fall more in the apprenticeship realm. I've had champions throughout my career who have believed in me. I've had certain skill sets and expertise that I'm able to apply and grow. And those are other ways of learning as well. If you truly want this industry to thrive, to MK's point, instead of cutting programs, continue investing. That honestly, that's what it is. We all love this industry, and if you're in it, there's some kind of passion, drive, um, and investing in this industry in several different capacities and not cutting these programs are so beneficial.
Well, and Lex here makes a really interesting point about um, project-based industries as a whole really tend to feel as if they prefer bringing in senior external talent rather than grooming the talent from within. And that is very specifically because of how the accounting works. The project-based industries often work quarter to quarter, and it looks better on a spreadsheet to bring in someone more senior and boom, train them up. But in the long run, that doesn't look great. But we're so obsessed with the stock market and returns. I mean, we've all been privy to conversations where we all know what the right thing to do was, but that didn't provide the immediate return to the shareholders. And we watched big companies and little companies make bad choices for individuals. And also by failing to invest in your own future, you've just got this exhausting churn. And there's very few company owners, right, who will step up and commit to investing for the long term instead of the easy turnaround quarter by quarter, year by year. Again, me and my 0 MBA degrees have opinions on this.
No, I love it. So in regards to, kind of wrapping up with inclusive experiences, is there anything else that would be beneficial for companies to start thinking about, or questions that they should ask themselves in the beginning, middle, and end sections to be more inclusive?
I feel like just pay attention to how important it is when different communities see themselves reflected. See how powerful that is, because it's overwhelming. So I was at the Immersive Industry Homecoming Summit a few weeks ago at Las Vegas, and the final speaker, the keynote, was the 2 co-founders of the Museum for Black Girls. And at the very end of their presentation, at the end of their talk, which was absolutely lovely, they showed a reel of guests who had come through, had the experience, and just talked about what it meant to them to be there and to see themselves reflected in that way. And oh my God, it was beautiful. And I think everybody in that room who was there because they love this industry and they believe in this work saw that and was like, that's what I want to do. I want to give somebody an experience that is that validating and that life-changing and that beautiful. And that just doesn't happen if you aren't switching up your creative team and you aren't bringing in more voices. So see the work, recognize the value, and then you will start putting the priorities there.
I think we're at an interesting point in history right now across every industry, not just themed entertainment, but in particular the creative arts, where change is happening at a faster pace than certainly in my lifetime, right? And so, yay, right? That feels like the right direction, but also, ew, like there's so much cringe, right? Poor Xavier is routinely asked, "You're a Hispanic man. Please represent all Hispanic men to me. Go." Right? Bless his heart. I moved to Texas, so I can say bless his heart, right? He does it, but like that is a completely unfair burden to put on an entire population of people. So like we need to get beyond that. And Melody asked an interesting question here about how do we as a community continue to groom this sort of guidance? And one of the interesting realities is when we first pitched in the Themed Entertainment Association, when we first pitched a student membership or Next Gen and all about mentorships and interns and such, originally there was a heck of a lot of pushback because in a project-based industry, everyone is always looking for the next gig. It's not just the 22-year-olds. It's, at every age, people want development. And there was resentment. I'm like, why do the kids get these resources and I don't? And so we kind of rethought the entire plan for next gen activities and opportunities to be for a wider range of folks in the industry. Because you're right, Melody, like people are not going to want to mentor the next generation if they don't feel that that's a service that they're getting. And that's just because we're humans. And so an industry that is much more supportive to everybody, not just newcomers, people who are taking a left turn, people who are retired and coming back in a different capacity. That's a culture that we need to breed internally. And if somebody says, how come the interns get an ice cream social and I don't? Say, great. How can we schedule an ice cream social for all of us, right? Just be continually culturally make it the norm that we have each other's backs.
Absolutely.
And by the way, Melody is the leader in this, setting up Slice Creative, right? She has done a massive amount of work. And Slice Creative, different than other job boards, is not just a place for freelancers to post their work and be found, and employers to post the work and get talent, but it's a community.
Mm-hmm.
People get to know each other. They have special events. And that's a big part of success for everyone involved, not just Slice Creative as an entity, but every single participant gets the support they need as a community and not just another cog in the machine.
Absolutely. And I know Melody has been an incredible asset to myself and Big Break Foundation, and we look forward to partnering with them even more. So thank you, Melody, and thank you for tuning in. I know you're on vacation right now. But going into kind of the industry has been great at moving in specific directions. I know one of the spaces we talked about in our pre-production meeting was the Human Rights Museum in Canada. What are some of the either examples or experiences that you all have been able to enjoy that you're like, yes, this gives me hope and we're going in the right direction and I want to see more of this type of thought and innovation and diversifying within the industry? Xavier, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to start and then we can go from there.
So for me, it would have to be usually like any city that I go to that I visit that has a small museum or even a large museum or even something that's in a bigger museum like the Art Institute of Chicago that concentrates on sort of just cultures that you really don't hear about often. A lot of the times I love going to, experiences that involve Native American culture because rarely do I ever get to meet someone that's Native American. But at the same time, I don't really know much about Native American and I would love to know more. And so that's what gives me hope is when I see all these museums just bringing stuff up for that, particular, heritage and everything else like that. And at the same time, there's this museum in Chicago. It's at the Mexican Museum of Arts, and it's in the middle of South Chicago, where my family's from. And I go there often as much as I can to visit, not only because they display artwork from Mexican artists from the past, but at the same time, emerging Mexican artists, very contemporary. Their works, different styles, photography to paintings to sculptures. And I love seeing all these new things in there, and it brings me hope because there is that community of Hispanic artists and artists that are minorities that are coming into. And I just hope that I could continue to meet these people and talk to them about themed entertainment and having them try to cross over into themed entertainment so we could expand and give this knowledge to everybody.
Absolutely. MK?
Yeah, I'm looking at a question here that JM has just asked an interesting question on. Are there any workarounds for IAPA's $570 individual membership fee out there, thinking of job-seeking non-students? And again, this is a project-based industry where everyone's always looking for their next gig. And I can't say I've seen it in IAPA, but other industry associations sort of peripheral to our industry have started things like hardship discounts. For example, SIGGRAPH, which is a Computer Animation Interactive Technologies conference, the closer it gets to the conference, and they're like, we have space, right? They'll offer an extremely discounted rate for attendance to the conference if you can claim hardship. And guess what? They don't check. Nobody's checking your bank account, right? They're just trusting that you are someone who says you're struggling. So, a lot of the resources that we've been sharing here were invented by people who didn't see it exist. Mm-hmm. So, JM, write a letter, right? Type to IAPA and say, our industry was just decimated. Hundreds of thousands of people in theater, museums, parades, sports theme parks have lost their jobs. Could you do like a 1-year membership reduction or something like that? And Slice Creative, I think, didn't they drop their membership fee for a year or so?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are some examples here and there, but sometimes you got to plant the seed in their head. Sometimes there's bylaws, right? So SIGGRAPH is a nonprofit organization, which means they can never offer services to anyone lower than the student price. So they would offer the hardship price is the same as the student price, but like work within it. But yeah, nobody's going to say, really, is the industry floundering right this minute? They'll say, oh yeah, you're right, Jam. That's a good point. Also, strike while the iron's cold, Jam. Due to the international travel restrictions right now, I mean, I haven't booked my flight to IAPA yet because I'm not 100% sure it's happening. But the state of Florida is open. The convention center is open, so it will probably happen. But very few to maybe no international attendees can come due to COVID flight restrictions. And so the themed attractions academic society, in the prior 2 years, we've had over 200 attendees. We're expecting 50 right now because people can't come from other countries. The types of people who submitted became very US centric because international folks couldn't submit. So knowing there's going to be probably reduced attendance, ask them, look, a half price body is better than 0 bodies, right? Could there be like a COVID discount or something?
No, and to your point, I haven't seen what IAP has done, but TA did a scholarship as well. But who knows? Things are changing. I do know the conference is happening 100% in November, and hopefully to see some international involvement. I know some things have changed with restrictions lifted, so who knows? But we're all in this state of unknown right now. And any opportunity that we can help one another out and remain a community, I think, we need to be striving towards.
I would also say, like, another reason just to like reach out into your communities and have an ear out. I was gifted a ticket to IAPA 2 years ago in 2019, which was great because I was hustling so hard. I just went to try to find a job, and there was absolutely no way I could have afforded it on my own. But it was through Harriet B's Daughters, and someone was like, "Hey, we're exhibiting. I have some extra tickets. Does anybody need help?" And I was like, "What?"
Those passes are very often for the trade show floor. No content beyond that. But you know what? You can kill a week in the trade show floor, meeting and talking to really great people.
Yes, and you can talk your way into some parties. And again, like,
maybe just
hustle.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm hoping we could get into the hustle of this industry as well. Stressful, iron is cold.
Better for worse, I'll make to glamorize it.
The IAPA for student members has a really great event called Career Slam, which it's one of the smartest ways I've seen this done. So the Themed Entertainment Association has Gib Gab, which is sort of a round robin experience. And it's a frantic goat rodeo, right? Because you have 3 minutes to talk to people and go to the next team and it's not a job interview. I will never not participate, right? Because it's a great way for students to get comfortable talking to industry, but it's not the proper forum to see someone's portfolio or review them, right? It's a deadline for students to get their stuff done. I think IAPA does a better job with the Career Slam because they have 9 students to 1 adult. And it's not an interview. You just ask them questions about the industry. So you don't have to introduce yourself 9 times. You just do it once and they all heard it. This student will have a question and the others also secretly have the question, but we're scared to ask. So it's just a much more valuable exchange of information. And then when you get up and rotate tables, it's the professional who gets up and rotates. Because if you have 9 students with backpacks, sometimes it just takes too long. So operationally, it's a much better meet and greet thing. So if you do find yourself at IAPA, make sure and look for the Career Slam event so that you can sign up for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, well, going back a little bit, Lacy, is there any kind of examples that you want to share that you love, that you've seen in the industry of it opening up or different boundaries being pushed within the limitation, the expressiveness of art and creativity in the space?
Actually, yeah. And this is a little bit hardcore, but that's actually also why I love it, is the National Memorial for Peace and Justice that opened up in Alabama, I think. Yeah, in Montgomery. And I feel like it's like, it is a fantastic cross between like installation art and museum work in terms of like one of the features there is they have these very coffin-like hanging structures. And there's one for every county where there was a lynching in the United States. And your county's coffin will hang there until you come and take ownership of it and bring it back and display it in your own county. And my county of Denton, Texas definitely has one hanging there. But oh my God, like it's so ballsy and also like, absolutely, you should be doing this. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
Also, Splash Mountain got changed, and that's great too.
One thing I was super lucky to get, I entered an industry that I knew nothing about, felt completely unworthy. I went through a design competition. So did I earn the job or did I win it? A lot of questions in my little head here. But very early on, I had an experience that told me exactly what we do. So I was hired to work on the Aladdin VR project, which was a beta test at Epcot Center in 1994. And it was an R&D lab. We ran hundreds of thousands of guests through in about a year and a half, July of 94 to September of 95. And we surveyed and recorded the flight paths of 75,000 guests and interviewed them. To date, it's still the largest database of research on guests who use VR. And we had 4 magic flying carpets and about 200 guests per show. And we'd pull you. And we always try to get 2 males, 2 females. If you had a ponytail, dreadlocks, anything unusual, we would definitely throw you on because we wanted to see if the system would work with your human configuration. And so this is like my 3rd week of work. It's the first week the lab has opened in Florida. And a young boy came in who had been injured in a burn accident. So he had lost half his body, half his face, his left arm and his left leg were burned off. And he was in a wheelchair that he powered with like a lever that he pushed back because he didn't have wheels like this. So he pushed it back and forth, which is an old toy that, in the 50s, children had cars they published. So he came through in his wheelchair, saw the show, out the back, in the front, out the multiple times he's through the show. And he asked our operations team members, could you maybe pick me to fly the magic carpet? It was a head-mounted display, motion-based experience. And they said, no, sweetheart, you need 2 arms to fly the carpet. And he said, I'm going to cry. He said, pick my dad and he'll tell me. I'm like, oh, God, put him on. Guess what? He can fly. He said, look what I did. He didn't say, look what you did, Imagineers. He said, look what I did. And that's our job. I'm going to go off camera now.
Thank you, MK, for that. No, absolutely. And, limitation is only what we set, right? Us as human beings of saying what we can or cannot do or what someone else can or cannot do. So thank you for sharing that, MK. Any other great examples that you've seen, whether that's an employee experience or processes that we kind of want to say, this is an example of going in the right direction before we get more into some tips and MK comes back and she has a great list of stuff. But other examples that you've seen firsthand or experienced or heard about. Xavier?
Thinking. I would say for me, it's whenever I go to the parks, specifically Epcot, I would go to the different pavilions and everything. And I have a close tie into the Mexico Pavilion because that's where my heritage is from. And to be in there, I would just sit down near the fountain or on the fountain and eavesdrop just to see what people are talking about. And I had this Mexican or Hispanic grandmother walk in, go down, and she started crying. And I'm just sitting here and listening to it. And she's saying she hasn't been to Mexico in years, but that the interior of the Mexico Pavilion brought her back to what her town looked like. And I agree. I've been to Mexico many times, lived there for weeks to months at a time. And the Imagineers did such a good job with the interior of the Mexico Pavilion that it does look and feel and sometimes smell just like Mexico. And to see this old lady just shed tears because it brought her back to her hometown sort of feeling, like give me a good feeling, and basically what I wanted to just mention is we have the chance to take our knowledge and our experiences and build these worlds for our guests to enjoy and to create memories. So, it's such a fun thing to do, but at the same time, there's not a lot of people that it's not diverse enough to where we could just experience it in other different ways. So, just bringing in more diverse people just to get those experiences out and have everybody experience something similar to what she experienced would just be great.
Well, and I think one thing that we do well, to, pat ourselves on the back a little here, we don't do it enough, and there's not enough of us doing it, but we are a very naturally collaborative industry. Mm-hmm. I think people will be surprised at how friendly we are with our enemies, right? Like I'm going to work there in a month. My best friend works there, right? So the research that we did on Aladdin and through 94 and 95 was published in 1996 and is available to everyone. Any patent related to pyrotechnic safety that the Walt Disney Company has released for free to everyone, right? Because we want you to be safe. We don't want you to know how to make a lovely violet that nobody else can make. We'll hold on to that patent. But we will share any data related to pollution or safety. And that used to be how the computer animation industry was, but like someone figured out, I remember the first time people rendered hair, feathers, fire, like that was a big deal. They wrote a paper, they published the code. Now there's so many animation studios solving the exact same problems in parallel. Disney's working on fabric. ILM is working on fabric, right? They're less because they see it as a competitive advantage. But the only way that you groom the industry talent-wise and vision-wise is share that stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, we won't talk about what we're doing. It's a publicly traded company, and there's reasons to hold that close to your chest. But we're actually quite good about how we do it. And we just need to do it more. We need to just talk about it more.
No, absolutely. And even taking that a further step is when we have discovery, applying that back to schools and then or other educational and opportunities for either people within this industry or people trying to come into it, so that there's this continuous learning, because we're always growing and we're always learning, and in this craft and in this space, it's so important that we do so. There's new knowledge and technology and experiences that we're now getting exposure to for the first time. And so having that as an opportunity for everyone in this industry, that community over competition model is so imperative for us to move forward.
Well, and it's also an education process, right? We had a situation where a lot of our patents were getting kicked back by the U.S. Patent Office because they're like, why are you patenting that weird little thing? And so we had them to Disneyland. We had several patent examiners for a day. So we first gave them a lecture on our patent program, how it works. And then we took them up into the park and we're watching a projection experience on Small World, and pointed out with the Stuart Langley, who's our head patent attorney, says, you guys aren't looking at our product. And he pointed to the family next to us and said, that's our product. Right? The reason I patent that projection technology, which you might not understand or say, well, no one else will use it, is because of the look on her face. And so understanding what we do and why we do it, right, is what consistently allows us to do it well. And it's so easy to get seduced by the latest whiz-bangy thing, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you actually invest in it. It'll have a year or two, segues at Epcot. It had its moments. And the audience might expect something like that at Epcot. But if you really think about what is my end product, it's not a roller coaster or a theater show. I mean, just think about SeaWorld and the massive shift they've made culturally in terms of what their end product is. It's now all about conservation. It's no longer about orca shows, right? It's about the animals and conservation. So if you understand what your mission statement is and be totally open to morphing it over time, you're going to have much more success in the long run. And that goes for you as an individual as well. Like, what are you interested in doing? I've had a lot of gaming students who refuse to work for shooting games, and they have perfectly successful careers. Their peers are like, oh, death. If you don't work for a AAA shooting game, no one will hire you ever. That's not true at all. There's plenty of opportunities and other experiences. So think about what you care about and what you want to contribute to, and you'll find a space where you're happy and productive.
No, and bringing up to your point about mission or even values from like an individual standpoint, I talk to a lot of companies and they don't even have that. They don't have their North Star. So if you don't have that, creating a mission and vision for your company, organization, association, and so forth, so you always have a guiding light of what it is that you are going to be doing and moving forward. But even don't just sit on that. Constantly have evaluation of what is the new next best thing that we can be doing. Just because we're great at something, how can we be even better? How can we beat ourselves, or how can we beat other people, or be more of a resource or a better experience all around? So constant evaluation, individually and then on an organizational level as well.
And guess what? That changes over the course of your lifetime too, right? Like at some point, paying off your student loans is your priority, right? And you'll do whatever it takes to do that. At other points in your life, less travel is a priority, and you'll sort of shift what that is. So it's not like you're a one thing forever, right? Like you said, like constantly question yourself, question the industry, look for where there may be opportunities. So when my department was obliterated, my entire department went. 32,000 Parks and Resorts cast members at Disney went. For the first time in 28 years, I said, what do I want to do? But I had sort of just been bouncing around through life. I had a great job. It was fun. I traveled all over the world. I took 92 business trips between August and December in the fall of 2019. And I had been teaching on behalf of Disney at a whole bunch of different places, at Carnegie Mellon, at Florida State, at UCLA. And I'm like, I kind of love teaching. The students are great. I learn as much from them as they learn from me. And so I looked into that. And boom, I'm now heading up theme and entertainment at UT Austin, which was not, I would never have quit Disney to do that, right? Because I had a good gig, right? I own a house in California. Who wants to move to Texas? But when I was given the challenge, what are you going to do next? What do you want to do next? I'm like, turns out I actually have opinions. Oh yeah, I'm just learning it. Put them home. Yeah, you shouldn't have to wait until there's a cataclysmic life change, right? Before you have that personal evaluation. And maybe just ask people around you, like, we're terrible at evaluating our skill sets, right? So ask people around you, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think? Where do you think I'd add value? It might not be the answer you want if you have a dream of something, but it is super satisfying to do what you're good at and when you know it matters.
I heard recently, and I love this, come up with the 3 things that you think you do that add the most value to your workplace. Ask your supervisor to do the same, what they think, the 3 things they think bring.
Bold.
Those match up. See if you're on the same page about what you do.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. I'm definitely now I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay.
If you like the worst career advice I was ever given, in a similar conversation, right? I was talking to a team, because I was in R&D for 25 years before I was pulled out into an academic role at Disney. And I had leadership who said, MK, you need to not be so nice. And I'm like, what does that mean? Well, you can't say no. You're too nice. You'll do things for anyone. And it's hard. It can be hard to define what you are when you do so many things. And I'm like, and they said, leadership is looking like if they can't put a pin in you, you're gone. So, and I'm like, okay, so it came from sort of a parental, we got our eyes on, whatever. So, by the way, I still kept being nice. I just didn't report it in my weekly updates that I was nice. So like 4 weeks go by. I still worked in Florida, but I happened to be in a meeting in California. And somebody came in and said, hey, could you start being nice again? And I'm like, why have we had a change in our mission statement, right? And they said, oh, this executive just stood outside this room for 20 minutes because he saw you in here to just do nothing but give you a hug and move on. And we can't get him to answer a phone call. Why does he like you? And I'm like, oh, because I was nice. Because he was actually one of my students as an undergrad, as a grad student. He was my intern, and now he's an SVP at Imagineering. I'm like, turns out a lifetime of being nice, people are nice back. So
who would have thought?
I know, like, let's put this in stone. Don't be a butthead.
Yes, if only more people leaned into that. Well, MK, I know you have some resources, like 10 things to kind of help in the industry. Before we get into that, Lacy, Xavier, do you have any kind of closing words or tips of wisdom, advice that you would want to give to the audience wanting to come into this industry? Yes, yay, nice people. um, Wanting to get into this industry or stay in this industry and make it more well-rounded and equitable space for all.
Like for me, it would have to be keep learning every chance you get. Just learn everything, and once you happen to get into the industry, be a sponge. Learn from everybody else. Learn their mistakes, learn their triumphs, learn their history, and just keep moving forward.
No, great advice. Lacy?
I would say don't be afraid to be a fan. Like your enthusiasm can be one of the most wonderful things about you. And I think there's a lot of, like, especially if you're starting out, especially if there's any insecurity, this sort of tendency to be like, well, I'm cool, so I need to not tell you that you're cool because I need you to know that I'm cool. Like, screw that. Just love things. Like, if something truly comes along and gives you joy, that is the life and bread of what we do. So do not be afraid to be a fan. If somebody thinks you are too excited, then that's their problem.
Thank you for that. I wish I would have heard that earlier in my career, because I tried to even put myself in a box of like, I need to be professional. And, I get told all the time that I'm childlike. Sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad, depending on the context that they're saying. But I own it. I am childlike. And one of the things that I love about children so much is just this raw potential of anything is possible. And I really lead my life in that way. MK, I would love to hear your tips. I know you put together.
I got a list.
There they are.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, again, I'm going to sum what everyone just said. So put a pin in at the end of it, Toria. So it is about owning the process from beginning to end, right? So what we tend to do now is like, here's the design team, here's the sketch. Ooh, erase that person and draw a person of color in that illustration. Like, it's an afterthought. And I was looking at a sketch for a concept, a sort of a food cart kind of thing. And in the front, it was a fairly deep illustration. In the front was a man in a wheelchair, a man of color. So boom, 2 check boxes right there. And the food carts were not wheelchair accessible. I'm like, you do get that this guy is literally a pawn in your story. And the first response I got back was, oh, we're going to put some crates next to the food cart as a secondary option. I'm like, you literally just used the word second. And they're like, and so the good news is then the designer beat the crap out of himself and redesigned it. But it can't stop making it the last thing. The conversation needs to happen. Everyone needs to be in the room to start with. So I just sent a link that Kelly forwarded to everyone, a really great article that Dr. Catherine Woodcock from Ryerson University wrote on being part of the design process. Her lens is disabilities. She's deaf, and she also has a super awareness for how to design experiences for autistic guests. But that's the whole process. That's from the start. Those people are your guests, and you want their feedback. Those are designers and contributors, and you want that talent on the front end instead of the end of it. You can't just pass out an invitation and hope people will come to your party. Right? You have to bring them to the table. You have to include them consistently, create training opportunities, and then a career path after that. And inclusive means economic, senior citizens. It means size. People of different sizes are very often excluded from a lot of the experiences in our university. And there's lots of things that mean inclusive. And think about making accessibility the default. For example, when Disney Plus came online, the default was the subtitles were up and you had to turn them off. So make the default the most accessible option, and try and make that the norm for the universe. Also, here's another biggie. This is a whole other lecture. Salary transparency.
Oh,
yes.
Right? What people are paid is you'll be shocked. The person who sits next to you, what do they make? The person at another company, you'll go to another company and come back. So the industry as a whole, we have to be much better about salary transparency. And also we need to get over ourselves in terms of stamps of approval, education levels, certificates and the like. We just need people to do the work. We're getting in our own way when we put up all these barriers. So, let's help ourselves by breaking down which ones we can.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for coming on today and sharing your insight and experience. I've had conversations with all of you, and it's so nice to be in this space and having conversations like this move the industry that we love so much forward. And so I'm very excited to see what's to come in the future and the work that Big Break will do with partners and individuals like yourself. But to wrap up the show, I just want to thank everybody again. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. Please share this episode. It will be on YouTube and so forth. And make sure you go to bigbreakfoundation.org. We have a toolkit that you all can utilize. A lot of the resources and references that MK reference and the talking points are on that website as a resource for you from an individual standpoint. And we're looking to work with more organizations and companies from on strategy and assessment and building a more equitable culture within your organization. So a lot more to come. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next episode. If anybody has any topics, questions, please send them our way. My email address, it will be in the comments as well, so that you can reach out to me either via email or on LinkedIn. Once again, thank you so much. You all have a wonderful day, and just making sure you're kind to everyone and be nice. Thank you.